where you have very soprano heavy ensembles that can afford to split, and also heavy soprano melody, if you have a chart that you're splitting at the top end, but you've got very few singers in sections at the top end, you're creating a problem with execution for your ensemble. Particularly if one of those parts is the melody. You're ending up with somebody singing a solo. That's not going to work in the balance of the centre. What you could do though, is pull out a soloist. But if you were to do that, how many parts would be safest to stick with? 4 and a soloist. So if we consider this definition of BarberPop, or whatever you want to call it, as recognising that there is this subgenre that we've created that is a cappella charts for barbershoppers, recognising that we're really good at certain things and we're really, really rubbish at other things. Speaking of stuff we're rubbish at, what do you find in contemporary a cappella charts? What else?
Boots and cats.
VP, boots and cats and boots and cats. You can tell I'm really bad at VP because I'm still going boots and cats and boots and cats. Does everyone know what boots and cats are?
Beatboxing.
Yeah, beatboxing, vocal percussion. It's the beginner entry level for fools like me who really cannot access vocal percussion. Instead, you access it via boots and cats, and you can tell that I'm doing really, really badly. Now, there are individuals who do this well and have practiced it. But even within our organisation, there are a couple who are like Albert down in Victoria, who's actually a beatboxer. We haven't got many people who are at the level of actual vocal percussionists in contemporary a cappella groups. But sometimes we try. Have you seen this before on stage? How well does it go down, generally? Unless you've got someone who actually has done VP work. Yes. How does it go generally? A few people have done it internationally, crossover. It's happened before. Particularly it's where that's when people can do open division packages for their entertainment packages for their final sets, which only needs one contest song, and the rest you can do whatever you want. Now, doing whatever you want is a risk, because just because you can doesn't mean you should. The other thing that barbershop ensembles are not used to is
Oh yeah.
mic technique. Even if you happen to have a vocal percussionist in your ensemble, what do you tend not to have in places where you are rehearsing and performing? Good sound setup and a sound guy. The best a cappella groups in the world, like the one I had on the screen here before, travel with their own sound techs. Idea of North travels with their own sound guy. They're performing at some exceptional venues. They need consistency because a lot of sound technicians are not trained in working with a cappella singers, and particularly not differences between individually mic'd ensembles and barbershop ensembles. So if you're adding things like VP, you're adding so many challenges to your ensemble, even if you know that you've got a really established vocal percussionist in the mix that will not showcase your vocal percussion, they will not showcase the ensemble, or you're going to have to invest in finding the right venue, finding the right sound equipment, practicing with your sound equipment, making sure your ensemble is familiar with what that sounds like, is having somebody who might sound going to sound different, balancing it, getting a sound going. Are these sounding like they're going to be safe choices? Yeah. So this is where, it's not that any of these things are wrong, it's about recognising how much of a relative risk you're taking with every choice. Do you have to always make it 4 parts? No. Is it a risk to split it? Yes. Is it a bigger risk to split it at the top end? Yes. All relative risks. Are there particular ensembles you could do that with easily because they happen to have a mega tenor section, and actually that might be a better balance for that ensemble because they've really been top heavy on a lot of their standard barbershop stuff? Yeah, sure. So if you're writing for a particular ensemble, that can work really well. And if you're writing for a quartet, you probably won't split parts because most people are really good at overtones. What else is going to make something more like contemporary a cappella? We said before, I think Ben, who's immediately went dum 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 dum. Non-homophony, rhythm-driven, and bass lines that are incredibly rhythmic and percussive. Ability to do up tunes that are very rhythmically driven in a way that's not just relying on the homophony to move it forward, which is often what we're doing in barbershop charts. So would it be wrong to put in a really heavy rhythmic bass line and dum-dums for a barbershop ensemble? It's not wrong. How many people are currently singing a chart in one or more ensembles where the basses have a dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum? Yeah. There are situations where, as an arranger, if you were to make other choices that weren't rhythmically driven, it doesn't always have to be done, but dums can be quite effective. If you make other choices, it actually loses the feeling of the original chart. Unless you were making a decision to deliberately pull it out of a rhythmically driven song, which you might choose to do, to lose that sense of pulse means that you're not being true to the original. So there are times you have to do that. But if you gave your basses that for an entire chart, and your particular ensemble do not have tempo consistency as part of their strengths, part of their assets list, you are adding skill development for your ensemble. That chart is going to take a lot longer to workshop, and you've got to hope that that's what the director is actually wanting to work on in skill development that year, because if not, what's going to happen? Such a great chart. We're so glad you arranged it for us. Now we've just got a lot of new material right now, so we're just going to put that to the side. And it doesn't mean that your chart's bad, but chorus leaders need to make a decision about where the work is, and if you're writing something for an ensemble, which is the risks that they're not taking at this particular moment and requires a huge amount of skill development, it's not going to be picked up. Accessibility is one of the biggest characteristics of this particular genre, I'd say. And if you're writing for broad ensembles, not for a particular ensemble, I would argue the best thing you can do is to make it as accessible as possible, playing to every strength that you know every barbershop ensemble will have. Singing four parts, making sure that there's a lot that sits with melody, with lead, particularly which sections of the song. Where is it most important for everyone to feel at home in terms of part relationships? Choruses. Yep. So if you were to give everybody their usual voicings for a verse and then switch to tender melody in the chorus, what would happen? It would start to sound weaker rather than stronger. Firstly, you've got fewer voices, generally, on tenor. Secondly, it's not where everyone's home base is. If you were writing for a choral ensemble, and you did that, that would be interesting. It would give variety. It would give the soprano too something to do rather than just singing an E flat for the entire song, she says, having historically been a soprano too. It would give people something to do for their skill development. But if you did that for a barbershop ensemble, that's not skill development. You're not letting them shine at the places where you need rounding. So the moments that are climactic, the moments that are choruses, particularly transition into a landing of chorus, you take everyone back to home base as much as possible. You use the chord structures, voicings that people are familiar with as much as possible. What makes jazz a cappella different? Chords. Yeah. A whole lot of the rhythmic drive aspects you'll see in contemporary a cappella, but the main thing is chords. Do we as barbershoppers spend a lot of time with jazz chords? Generally. No. Some ensembles do steer into it, but by and large, our contestable barbershop does not engage in a whole lot of jazz chords.
Can you make a distinction between barbershop chords and jazz chords?
Yeah, and this is where, if we're going to take it back to a really limited definition, particularly informed by Sweetad's definitions, it still does help because regardless of all the different definitions across the orgs, there is a similar sense of what that trajectory is, and it's mainly on the basis of what is ringable to less ringable, what sounds more shop in terms of being able to move through that circle of fifths and it feel and sound shop to you as well as ringing. The most ringable chords are, number one, major triad. Most ringable chord in terms of reinforcement of overtone series is a major triad. What is the chord that we finish charts on mainly? Well, it's changed in recent years actually at the international level, but generally What do we have that final ring where you're hearing the massive lock in the overtone? It's our 1 through 5. And it's mainly voiced 1, 5, 1, 3, because that is the way that you get the most overtone series reinforcement on a major triad. So we often do automatically say Dom 7 because it is the chord of barbershop, but it is not the most ringable. But it sets up the most ringable because the circle of fifths movement is tension release, dominant 7th to major triad tonic. And without that tension release, without that ring into the ring, it doesn't sound barbershop, or it doesn't sound as barbershop. So I think I might have given the game away when I asked, what is the second most ringable chord? Dominant 7. And the third?
Minor?
Secondary dominant 7.
Depending on how you name it, Dom 9, major 7 with an add 2, as long as within that chord you're removing 1 or 5. There are multiple ways of naming that chord, but that chord rings incredibly well, also -6 depending on the key. So, they are your 3 pillar chords in barbershop. In most strong contest vehicle charts, she says, singing a quartet who just rarely sings those chords. In most contestable charts, you'll spend the bulk of your time on those 3 chords. The bulk of your barbershop ensembles will feel at home on variations of those chords. The more time you spend on other chords, the further away you're moving from safe territory. Minor triads, fine. Yeah, -6s, -7s, they're pretty much usual stomping ground. Diminished 7s, clear stomping ground for barbershop. Use a lot of transition chords, can be difficult to tune, but they serve a function. Then you start getting into chords that we call secondary chords, like major 7s and major 9s. Those chords are beloved by Cameron Newton. Those chords have a very modern sound. A lot of songs that you hear now, contemporary songs, will involve a lot more major 7s and major 9s. And for those who aren't sure what I'm talking about, the difference is Dom 7 versus a major 7. Very different feel, very different emotionality, and also just completely different utilisation in music as we've progressed over the decades. A lot of the songs in the 1920s to 40s did not have significant use of major 7s and 9s, other than as chords that served a function when the melody was on 7 or 9, major 7 or 9. That's it. Whereas now a lot of modern songs will use 7s, major 7s, as critical chords within the progression, feel of a chorus. Now these are not charts that would generally serve us well as contest vehicles. They are often charts if there's a really strong major 7-9 feel in the chorus, that if you shoehorn it into barbershop, people who know the song will start going, and then you're losing song integrity, unless you're exceptional, like Theo Hughes, and then you can do whatever you want. But those songs, you might be able to arrange beautifully for your ensemble and create something with BarberPop that is far more true to the original song, that showcases your and other people's love of that song, if it's a really chord-driven song. If the implied harmony is such an important characteristic of it, that to shoehorn it into barbershop would be to destroy its beauty. What can you do instead? BarberPop it, baby! But what are you going to note when you do that? If you pull everything out of the implied harmony to make it all strong pillar chords, it's not going to sound like the song, which is the whole reason you're not going to shop it. But what are you also going to be aware of, noting that barbershop ensembles don't spend a huge amount of time, generally, on sustained major 7s and major 9s. So this is where you've got to balance it for the needs of the ensemble, the strengths of the ensemble, and the original song. The original song is just all major 7s through the verse. You're probably going to keep as many of them as possible, but you are going to voice the chords in the way that's most intuitive to a barbershop ensemble. How would you voice major sevens such that barbershop ensembles are more used to it? Because it's the way you voice them as a transition group. Anyone know?
7 in the lead.
7 in the lead is usually how we have in a barbershop ensemble because it serves that transition function. But what's the most critical thing? Bass is on 1. Major 9, bass is on 1. This might sound obvious. The number of charts I see where people are steering into modern chording, jazz chording, as if that means that all of the rules are out the window. If you do that, you are taking your singers so far away from their usual home that they will start to lose anchoring. Bassers will complain about being on the tonic all the time, but if you give them a lot of things that aren't tonic, they actually get a little sad, you know that. And if you put them on 3 a lot, depending on the chord, the other singers start to get really confused. An exception might be where you choose to add flavour and interest. What's something that you can do for an extended period in BarberPop with the bass section that you would not be able to do with a contest song? Melody! So it's a really good time to give your singers an opportunity to showcase themselves. You're not necessarily looking at this from a skill development perspective, although it can serve that function, but you're looking at giving your singers opportunity to do something that they normally wouldn't get to do. Bassers might get a lot of pickups and a lot of 1 to 2 bar transfers, but they don't get a lot of time in the sun. And if they do get those transfers, it's usually because they're still on a pretty implied harmony congruent part. The basses are usually on the melody line, allows the other parts to sit above them and to maintain a barbershop feel. But you might have a really interesting melody line that's really chromatic and it happens to sit really low. You might happen to have something like a Freddie Mercury chart where mere mortals can't sing it because the range is ridiculous. And rather than feeling compromised into switching octaves on things, you might choose to give an entire extended section to the bass. And give an entire extended section to the tenors, not because you're giving them a go, but because it actually solves a problem and maintains more integrity with the original song. And then you might do that on a bass line which is not something that lives on tonic, 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 fifth tonic. You might give them something really fun to play with for a while that's right within the middle of their good range, their tessitura, their comfort spot, so that they can really showcase themselves. And it gives the other parts a different part relationship to steer into. What's another thing that you can do in terms of melody transfers? We've talked about the risks of giving tenor stuff to do for too long because it starts to sound choral, but you've got opportunities to use it, particularly if you've got melody up in the gods. Who else might want to join the melody party? Barrys don't dream of melody. They say this, but you put us on a melody for more than 2 bars and we're like, I want a 3rd and a 7 that I can tune flat. But sometimes it's really good to challenge a baritone with a melody because they've forgotten what a melody is because they think that their part is the melody. I can say this, for I am a baritone of my soul. So it's really good to do that, but who else does that challenge? It mainly challenges your leads. Because the part relationships are otherwise exactly the same, but it's your leads that are not used to singing, you know? And will that help them in all of your other contest songs? Yes, because there are moments where they're in harmony and moments that people have melody transfers for short periods, but it's good skill development to then be practicing that another rep for an extended period. But if you were to do that, would you also be challenging them with a rhythmically driven song where the basses are dum-dumming and adding a solo section and making sure you had lots of major 7s chords and making sure that it was a really long song that went for 7 minutes? Pick your battles. Pick your battles. So this is where when you're in the planning phase and you're picking a song and you've gone, I really want to arrange this. I don't think this is going to be a good contest vehicle, or I've been told it's not going to be a contest vehicle, but I really want to arrange it. So that's good, it means I have fewer constraints. However, it is a problem because I have fewer constraints, so you've got to pick your own constraints at the outset. This is we're not going to say, because it's secret, the chart that I may have arranged for you recently. How long is the original? Like 9 minutes or something?
At least.
Yes, so one of the first things that I needed to do was go an a cappella chart that is an extremely long, highly varied, highly instrumentally and rhythmically driven chart. Am I going to make a cappella singers do that for 9 minutes?
No.
Absolutely not.
Certainly not a seniors acapella group. Anyway.
No acapella group. Does anyone know what Dick Sharon says about this? When does a standard acapella audience lose interest? 2 minutes.
Oh. So it's actually when you get to the international stages, then you, yeah, and it's like, oh, we can do like a 9-minute part, 9-minute song, and that's
For
international.
those in my comedy class, we talked about pitching to an audience
Yep.
at international quartet finals.
Yep.
So rules of thumb go out the window because you've got extremely high level groups that don't have the same type of endurance problems. They still do. They hide it very well. And they're also pitching to a particular group who are responding to their elite skills and wanting more of it. But by and large, any a cappella song, now this is not a rule where I'm saying you must have a stopwatch on any chart you do and make sure that it goes at 2 minutes and 2 seconds that you shorten it. But I think it's a very helpful rule of thumb that Dean has put in our minds to say, don't make it overly complicated. Make sure you're not giving your singers an endurance exercise for the sake of it. Just because the original song is that length doesn't mean that you need to abide by that. What are the aspects that give your song that you're interested in arranging, of whatever genre, integrity? Is it the rhythm drive? Is it the lyrics? Is it the chord progression? Generally, you can condense most songs to 2 key elements that define the song. You think about any song, pops into your mind of any genre, you will generally think to yourself, oh yeah, no, that one's very much the lyrics and the harmonisation, very much so. And that can tell you where you need to be placing your emphasis, what the aspects are, that if you're going to give your singers a slight stretch goal outside of where they would normally sit in home base as barbershoppers, where you might choose to extend that. If it's something that's very harmony driven, with lots of what we call secondary chords, you're going to steer into that implied harmony, you're going to write with that, and you're going to steer away from anything else that you know is going to be a stretch goal outside of the realm of the usual singers. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I'm talking a lot about this at a concept level is that you can apply all of that regardless of which song you pick up and start to make choices about where you are going to steer your singers back to the ground that they can navigate comfortably so that you give them the best chance of success to execute your chart sooner rather than later. It is not a skill as an arranger to show off that you can write cool chords. If you make something unsingable, that does not showcase you as an arranger. That showcases that you are writing for yourself and not for your ensembles. Also, it won't showcase your charts because it doesn't matter how good they sound on MIDI or Melodyne learning track. If nobody can execute them, it does not showcase your skills. And I think this is something that's really critical to remember as we move away from constraints of contestability, that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the thing that can tether you are 2 aspects. What follows the integrity of the original song so that you don't lose those aspects that made you choose the song in the first place, and what plays to the strengths of the ensemble, both broadly in terms of general a cappella skills, and secondly, if it's for a particular ensemble, their skills. Including, if you happen to have in a quartet a particular singer with a mega range, but they never get to showcase it because they're on tenor and they're always singing within a fourth, that you could give them a huge sweeping melody line for a section just to showcase that they actually have that skill that they don't need to showcase. I'm sure you'd be on ensembles where you have singers that you think, we never really get to hear that person do what they do. You can pick a song where they're on solo, and then you write the sort of solid 4-part harmonisation playing to the ensemble strengths behind them. And what does that do? Showcases that singer even more. This all makes sense? So, as I say all that, who would say that they have done a BarberPop arrangement before? Who? And how much were you thinking about these sorts of elements when you proceeded? Did any of these things come up then as a barrier later on? And what were the things that were the ones that stick out? And what were the things that made it difficult for them to execute?
Because I wasn't thinking about heads or skills or strengths. I was just thinking, this sounds cool.
And I think this is the difference between, and that's also a really good exercise to do as an arranger. It's so fun to arrange with no constraint at all. So if you were to hear a particular chart and not think of any particular ensemble at all, or that you were necessarily writing for a barbershop ensemble, and you went, I actually hear this done in a jazz a cappella style, in 5 parts, I'm actually hearing the real group do it, and that's going to inspire me to write it this particular way. If you do that, that's fine, it's brilliant as an exercise. But if one of your goals is to then have someone sing it, and you then feel hopeless and abandoned because no one picks it up, you're going to be dissatisfied, right? But if you're happy to do it as an exercise and then put it out there, and if somebody purchases it, then so be it, then that's good. But it's also very important to know what your goal is before you start. Because there's nothing more tragic than feeling rejected as an arranger when your baby is good as that. But if you know that you're doing something mainly because it's how you hear it, you really want to write it that way, and that's where the play is, that's where the fun is, then do that, absolutely. But you need to know when you start that you're not doing a BarberPop arrangement that's likely to be picked up, going to be picked up by a particular group, because that's then, it's basically another type of constraint. It's just less constrained than writing a contest group. Any other thoughts from those that have tried before? Okay. Ken?
Range obviously is a range option, and how familiar the group is with, like, I've sort of the whole range of students who want to build a shop and got sort of like instructions about the while not being instructions about.
Yes, so Cam was saying the flip side, and I imagine you're going to be writing for groups that are used to unaccompanied singing, but very much contemporary a cappella style. So giving them a whole lot of tight, closed voice harmony at critical periods with melody on lead and no rhythmic drive would have been the same as what we're talking about in Flip. Because they would go, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you gave them a whole heap of Dom 7 tonic release, they would also go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Because they're not things that you would come across as frequently in contemporary a cappella, and if you did, you certainly wouldn't be talking about locking and ringing unless you happen to be going to university in Kent. Would that be right, Kat?
Essentially, yes.
I can guarantee you the Victorians don't have access to a CAM at the university. So if you are going to write for that sort of ensemble and want to give them something that might give them a bit of a taste, you're going to do the exact opposite. You're not going to let them hit the big climax or the chorus in unfamiliar territory, suddenly singing barbershop. You're going to give them elements of that homophony in places where it's, say, testing ground. You might do that for an interlude, for a break, and then you put them back into a territory that is their strength for the moments that require the greatest strength and ability of each other. Yeah, same applies. Similarly, I think we've got a string arranger in our midst, and there are things that would work. Yeah, string arranger. And I was saying yesterday that you've got, because you can arrange for strings, you can arrange for barbershoppers easily because of that sense of throughput through line and playing with homophony as well as using rhythmic devices. Perfect, that translates really well. But there are going to be things in relation to part ranges that are going to be a modification. Anybody else bringing in arranging from other genres and areas? No? So all of this applies philosophically regardless then of which genre you're using. So you don't need to then suddenly develop all of these skills as a contemporary a cappella arranger. or as a jazz a cappella ranger. You can go off and read about that if you wanted to develop that skill, then you can play in that space, but we don't need to have fear about it. If you know your voice and you know your ensemble, you can ask your director for what the ranges are of the voices in your ensemble. You can find the classic ranges for barbershop ensembles, particularly higher and lower voicing, on the BHS website. Just look up BHS voice ranges. Gives you a very good sense, not just of ranges with extremes, but also where comfort ranges. So you're not just going, oh, they can sing there, so I'll just give them that for half a page. That you're actually playing it in those spaces. And the thing is that arranging outside of contestable, you're still arranging within the same ranges, because that's how people have been voiced into your chorus. The really tricky thing is arranging for mixed ensembles, because the ranges are not fixed, and every mixed ensemble is different. So that's not where I would be starting to play, unless you are in a mixed ensemble, and you know what the ranges are for your particular quartet or chorus, and that's where you play. One of the things that I recommend as an arranger, regardless of what you're doing, is to sing through your parts to assess for singability. Because if you're walking or singing something that you can't execute, the likelihood is that it's not going to be easily accessible. Particularly if you've just written it and you kind of know how it goes. Now the issue is if you're then choosing to start with other voice charts and you're a low voice singer, it's not going to be the best way for you to practice. I practiced for years arranging SSAA because I could record all of the parts, albeit with a questionable royalty, but I could still sing through the part lines. And I think that's the safest place for you to begin, because it means that you can sing it, you can record it, you can put it together, you can hear how it actually sounds, as well as feeling what the horizontal line is doing. And you can feel how accessible it is part by part, as well as how it pieces together, rather than just listening to MIDI playback on whatever program you're using to run, or playing on piano, because that does not give you a sense of horizontal part lines. And so if you're considering these concepts when you're writing for barbershop ensembles, it means that you're going to create the most accessible vehicle that you can. And that will give your chart the best chance of both being picked up and of success in execution, and not being abandoned. And we don't want to arrange your babies to be abandoned. Any questions about that? I'm going to play you a couple of examples of different genres so you can hear, just to begin with, just some amazing music, because I like playing it with any excuse, but also the strengths that different ensembles have, some of which we might steer into and some of which we might not. Has anyone heard the barbershop version of this? Yeah, so there's a version, I think Steve Tramek did it, reduced the real group version, which is 5-part down to 4-part, and chopped some of it. And for what he was asked to do, it's very well executed. Did it work? I don't think so. Because he was basically asked to do a modified version of this. And I want you to listen to this and consider whether this is going to lend itself to contest budge.
Over this a little bit. Just keep
to assist with linking me to local internet because my hotspot has died. Just from what you heard so far, if you were to hear that, would it be one that you would say, yep, I can workshop that and I can make that contestable? Yeah, it is challenging, and Steve did it, but it was then imitative rather than being its own vehicle. How about a BarberPop arrangement? Potentially. And what would you be thinking about? Yes. So if you use it as inspiration, you can use this idea of very cool chart, it's going to be really groove driven, lots of opportunity for some melody transfers, but in terms of implied harmony, what's already really clear? Jazz. It's jazz, man. So we've already got quite a few complex features, and it hasn't really begun yet. Alright, am I making my point? So, you can love a piece of music and go, oh, I really, really want to do that, we can definitely modify it. This one, you could. But would you be able to take all of the song elements? Too many, though. Too many stretch goals for any barbershop song. If you were doing it like in a group with a fifth member as an exercise in being able to execute complicated jazz, and some of you have background in that, and you can do that for 3 minutes. That's already relying on a certain level of skills, but that's basically just going, let's practice being a jazz ensemble, fine. But if you were looking at translating this, what are the elements that you would choose as the key things that would drive your chart? What are the key choices that you would make as the things you steer into versus the constraints? No right or wrong, it's just about picking it. Rhythm? Yeah. So if you could pick the 2 key elements that you would steer into, rhythm, including the use of the tempo change, that slow swing section, you'd want to really drive that. Yeah. What would be the other element you'd pick if you could just pick one more? Yeah. So you want to respect that it's jazz, stick with a certain amount of implied harmony, but you might completely then simplify rather than needing to do huge extended periods of jazz sketch, and you bring it back to the melody, the implied harmony that they've got in the jazz version of this, and you'd mainly be steering into, alright, it might still be 2 or 3 minutes, I'm still going to have a slow beginning, rapid tempo beginning, I might take that down more than several clicks. I might still then try to have a a slow swing, a stomp section, and I'm going to keep that as the main feel, but I'm probably then not going to do as much harmonic variation and a scat section and all of that sort of stuff so that it's more accessible. And I'm not necessarily, I'm going to make it 4 parts. I'm not necessarily going to have a walking bass line as part of that, add a bit more homophony, and maybe not have a soprano who is in the gods singing high Cs, because maybe my tenor will kill me. You could also go, right, I really like this. I want to hit the integrity of the lyric with that jazzy played harmony.
Let me know.
And you might then pull it completely out of tempo. Or not have regard to the tempo choices they've made and do the whole thing really slow at one tempo. And you stick with the jazzy chords and you really steer into those with strong voicing by slowing it down and not having all of the tempo changes in the bass line. You can make it a different expression, a different vehicle, and give your singers who are getting used to different chord relationships more time to execute that, rather than ask them to execute too many skills at once. Or execute skills at a higher level than really used to living in terms of stomping around. That makes sense? No right or wrong, but it's about refining that conceptually before you put pen to paper, and trying to avoid exercises that are just transcription arrangements, because unless there's a specific reason that you're just transcribing something, because your director has said, I want this to be a very literal version of this song, I love the original, I don't want you to do anything fancy, just write it out in 4 parts, right? Sometimes that works, but by and large, if we're arranging something, we need to be saying something new. We need to be giving our singers an opportunity to use that original song as elements that make it unique and iconic, but say it in their own way, rather than just imitate the original. We've had a really good example of that sort of arrangement this weekend. That is a very good example of BarberPop, where it's written very strongly for a mixed ensemble. It has a lot of respect for the original elements of the song that are iconic, but it's not necessarily wedded to every element of the original song, and it's certainly not a transcription arrangement. What song am I talking about? Julia is an exceptional arranger, and she's just shown you why. She can arrange in multiple genres, but she wrote this for a community workshop to invite people to Baden. And so she's written a chart which has enough accessibility, but also enough complexity sorts of interest. It's got familiarity, including elements of the original, which anchor you, and anchor the ear of somebody who's coming in to a barbershop group to play for the first time. It's also got enough elements that barbershoppers can steer into and have familiarity with and like chords. So she's just written a chart that is for 2 audiences. Very effective. And you see how she didn't over-arrange it, she didn't do too much with it. But it also hasn't left any of the aspects that give the original song integrity. Page 1. Dum, bum, bum, ba, bum, bum. If you had a chart of Rocket Man without that movement and that rhythm, it would no longer be a song. If you would arrange the song Can't Take My Eyes Off of You by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons in BarberPop. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. What is an aspect of that song that is so iconic that if you removed it, it would probably arguably no longer be a song? Brass. Is it the chord progression? Is it the rhythm? Is it the melody? Is it the hum? No, it is one riff, and it's brass. If you did not have that in some form, it wouldn't be the song. Unless you have a plan before you start, you risk losing the elements that make the song, and you also risk trying to have too many elements. You'll give yourself too many elements. Alright, now we've got 10 seconds left. I've been given a song with a request this weekend to see whether this would be a good vehicle for arrangement. And I haven't heard it yet. Actually, I don't know if I know the song itself, I don't think I do. I haven't listened to it. So we're all going to listen to it together and answer the question.
And I'll put the proviso that I know very little about arrangement, so let's see what we can do. Thank you.
Get a sense of length, endurance. We do know that the song is 3 minutes 41. Right. So we already know that we're looking at arranging, we're going to need to cut some stuff. Probably. What are our thoughts? Firstly, good as a barbershop contest vehicle, yes or no? Boo, yeah. What are your thoughts? Hands up if you can consider how you would make that into a BarberPop vehicle. Hands up if you can. Yep. Hands up who'd be like, nah, can't hear it, nah. Thank you. Yep. So it's doable. Alright, now what are the elements of those that are like, yeah, I can hear what I do with that. What are the elements that you would choose to steer into?
Groove.
Groove. And what specifically? What? It's backbeat, it's groove, and what are the rhythmic elements you can use that make it its unique self? Let's do this again.
Oh.
Yeah, so you've got the aspect of, if you then listen to both the bass and the drums, so this is where you're going to get into it. You go, okay, already we've picked groove, but then what elements of groove? Because if it's just backbeats, okay, but what are the aspects that make this song itself? You've got that, you've got the strong backbeat, 2, 3, 4, and you've also got that additional drum beat and bass. Boom, 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 boom. If you didn't add that element, it would probably start sounding less like the song. So you picked up your groove is what we're steering into, we picked up that beat, we picked up that drive, but I would then say in addition to this chart, I'd be making sure that I used that element. Boom, 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 boom. It was quite varied, so I'd probably simplify it so it was easy to remember, and it was on a loop, but that I had enough of the character of the first 4 bars of it that it felt like the chart. And do that trade-off so that it's not so different that the group's never going to be able to memorize it. Too much of a challenge without enough of a payoff. But having one bit on loop is a payoff because it makes it more like the song, not just the backbeat feel. All make sense? Any questions about how we steer into groove? All clear? What other aspect might you choose to steer into for this one?
Has simple chord progression, so it's like we're on one chord for a long period of time, but it changes on the end of chords. So you've got groove, but you've also got that in the inputs.
So you would pick groove and imply harmony for this one. So let's listen to it again with harmony in mind.
It's one chord for a long time. That's the only concern.
If we think about it as though there's a bass line that is, rather than necessarily steering into the harmony, because you can then block that, you can use the harmonisation as your friend, which will work well in a bunch of groups, that's not wrong. But you could also consider that as a bass line that is part of the song. So that regardless of anything else you're doing, if you miss that line and you were starting to harmonise on the basis of strong voicing and you missed that line, that it would start losing something. Have you ever heard like a pop or pop rock song arranged that has a really good bass line, particularly a walking bass line, but when it's been arranged in homophony, that line is gone? Have you heard it? And you go, it's the song, but it's smaller because it's missing that thing that is a hook. Our ear is drawn towards hooks, groove, guitar riffs, really cool bass lines. So when you're breaking down a chart like this, we're listening for that. Is it just the harmony, or is it you've got a bass that's going dum, 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 very slowly? So these are the things we can tease out as we're listening. Anybody else pick a different element?
Transition beat was a really good spot for people who respond to that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's we were talking about the transition point. You all heard it, and I think we're all like, oh yeah, something's coming. You would ignore that bit at your peril because that bit is going to lend itself so well to a cappella. Gives you a great transition zone into your chorus. But then what's the unfortunate part about your chorus? The chorus is really short. The form is long build, and you sort of had a brief respite and then back into verse. It's not that you can't arrange that, it's just that the chorus was a big onset and then didn't necessarily have a driver. We're used to in BarberPop choruses having a chorus that follows a certain form, there's a certain duration. So it's not that we couldn't do this one, it's that you need to be aware that there's a risk of it sounding like it cuts off too quickly. If you have this build into 4-part harmony, release! And it's over. Okay, see ya, we'll go back to it. So these are things you don't necessarily need to be wedded though to the form of the original. If it doesn't feel right, you can then take another element, bring it back, repeat something, but being aware that could be a risk. What's another risk here?
Like the melody might be different to this or times.
It's not the usual melodic driver that none of us have said, I pick groove and melody. the leads, and you put that right on the transition zone for them vocally, and then just sitting there the whole chart, they'll kill you, right? So you're looking at something that is a relative weakness, so you can then choose where to voice it. You can share it across parts because it's not a huge melodic driver, and your leads aren't going to like or loathe being on that versus anything else. You're going to need to create other sorts of contrast because you don't have the instruments to play with. So you're going to have to create it vocally. The melody line is not giving you anything. I don't think the lyrics are, couldn't hear what they were. So you're probably not going to use those as your driving elements. And that's okay. It makes it easier actually, because you're not fighting over which elements to include. We all went groove, groove. Is this going to be one that you could choose to pull out of groove and just do as a really light, luscious song? No, I mean, you can try. It wouldn't work very well, because the melody and the lyrics are not going to give you anything to work with. So I think this would work really well, but as long as you know what the limitations are, and that you're going to need to add elements for contrast, because the song doesn't give you much. And this is why you don't hear a lot of modern songs of any genre being converted into not just contest songs, but a cappella songs in general, because generally the arrangers need to add items of interest, add multiple key changes, for example, to keep that sense of lift, because it's the same melody, the same chords, the same lyrics over and over and over and over. There's no lyric development. All right. Hopefully that gives you an approach now for any song you hear on the radio as well, to be able to break it down and go, okay, I don't have to then just stop thinking will it shop? No, oh right, move on. That it's, okay, can I BarberPop it? If so, how? What are the elements to steer into? What are the ones that are perils? What are the ones that I could choose from, but I can't choose them all? Just because I can doesn't mean I should. And what's my plan before I start so that I don't get carried away with doing all of the stuff because I can? And at the end of the day, remembering your ensemble or your hypothetical ensemble and what is going to be most accessible for them and showcase them, which secondarily showcases your child. All right. Any questions? Come up and have a chat with me. Thank you very much for your attention.